that a residential facility?
She's only in residential. Right now, during the day program, the minimum you can go is 2 days a week. Otherwise, it's 5 days. There has to be at least 3 adults in every classroom, and no classroom is bigger than 8 people. They have people all the way from twos, to people that walk around with almost 30 kids.
I'm going to tell you, I have heard about that place.
You know what? Google it.
Yeah.
Elias Academy.
And I think I have a house in Wisconsin. I think if I make my Wisconsin address my primary residence, the waiver programs in Wisconsin will pay for it.
Right. We had to take Kelly to their aging and disability and have her screened to see if she even qualified because we do have a college up in Wisconsin. So he's a resident of this town.
Ah, so are they going to pay for it then?
But we're at 70s.
Oh, right.
We need to make sure that it's residential because they probably forget. And I don't mean to be like, but look into it. It's
I will.
phenomenal.
I will.
What a good mom you are.
What?
What a good mom you are.
My son wouldn't agree. He thinks I'm the worst parent of all time. Well, and I probably was to him. Because Liz was born when he was 12. And we pretty much spent the first 5 years in and out of the hospital.
Is she your oldest then?
No, I have three.
Three. Yeah, we have three too.
And so, you know, Robert at the age of 12 until like 18 had this mom and this sister that disappeared for weeks on end. Because I wouldn't leave her in the hospital by herself.
See, even to this day, we never leave Kelly. I'm 24/7.
Yeah.
The nurses told me, please don't wear boots. They're rude. We'll think your partner is here. And I told Kelly's last 2 years has been phenomenal. And I told Dr. Giannini, you have to advocate for us, with all of us, with the system. Because she had a resident at one time, and he kept wanting to discharge us. And I told Dr. Dominiak, we're not even ready to go. Kelly had just gotten her first G-tube, and she doesn't have it now. But I told him, so you have to advocate. And I told the resident, I said, you stress me out every time you walk into the
I completely understand. And I really don't think that this is appropriate for Liz. I really, really don't think. I don't think it's appropriate. What? Yeah, she doesn't need her wheelchair. We're in a hurry a lot, so we use the wheelchair when we're in a hurry. Because we're always.
We use the wheelchair for behavior control to take her
Really?
to the doctors because we can't run after her when we're having issues with her starting to fall all the time. So I'm wondering what's going on. We just did EEG last week.
Did you do a 24-hour EEG?
She will not cooperate. And I told the doctor, I said, she won't sleep. If you put that on her, she gets, she knows something is different and you can't tell if it's okay. And he said not to worry. They call us right away to start taking her seizure activity going on.
So the medications are in control.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
first official duty is to introduce today's speaker. Maybe not. I've been to a couple board meetings, but this is the most exciting thing I've gotten to do at least. It's not voting on budgets or any of that kind of stuff. So I am so proud to introduce for this session, which is about school advocacy, IEPs, and those sorts of issues in planning. And it's called Moving Beyond Barriers. And my new friend, Kim Mellenthin, who is a lifelong learner. She's the parent of 3 children, Robert, Liz, and Brian. She married Brian Mellenthin in 2013, it says here, and she grew up in Chicago and currently lives in Palos Park, Illinois. She has a master's degree in special education from the University of Illinois in Chicago, with certifications in assistive technology, multiple disabilities, and transition. And during her career, she served on the Governor's Advisory Board of Unmet Needs in Students in Special Education in Illinois. She's a member of the Community Advisory Board for the MWS Foundation, participated in the Illinois Stars for the Future Mentorship, volunteered as a team leader for Next Steps Illinois, and serves as a board member for the ACT Foundation. Her daughter Elizabeth, I think, is here right now in the room somewhere. Hi, Elizabeth. And that's who Kim calls her best teacher. Spending 30 years living with and caring for Liz has given Kim learning opportunities that few, except for those of us in this room, will get to experience. So now I think I've covered most of the important information here, but you've used all of that work to improve Liz's quality of life, to benefit those in your community, and now I think really gratefully to benefit all of us in this room. So Kim, take it away.
All right. So I called this presentation Moving Beyond Barriers because after 29 years of working in multiple systems, whether it be government, adult services, and education, I've really kind of decided that the systems that are set up to help us are really the barriers. So that's why I called it Moving Beyond Barriers. And I thought I was going to get a lot of pushback from people I work with and other professionals. And it so happens that they all agreed, which I was shocked. I thought, like, so this is on transition, education, and advocacy. How many people know what transition is? Okay. Transition is the time that your children spend from 16 to 22 preparing to exit education. And there's a whole separate component of requirements and things that are required by the federal government to happen to prepare them to transition. We all know what education is. Does everybody have a child in education in the system right now? No? Are you guys pre-system or you're pre-system? Okay. So who am I? I'm your average mom with a child with a disability who always felt like I didn't know enough about everything and anything to participate or advocate for Liz. So I went to school. I went back to school. And I went back to school, and my husband told me if I went back to school one more time, he was going to divorce me. Pretty close. So I started my career as an elementary teacher. When Liz was little, I had so many problems with her education that I decided, well, there must be some secrets I don't know here. So I'm going to go back to school, and I got a special education degree. I was qualified to teach children 3 to 22. Then we had more problems, and I'm like, well, clearly I don't know enough. So I went back to school, and I became an assistive technology specialist. How many people know what assistive technology is? So assistive technology is anything that supports functioning. It could be an adapted spoon, it could be a communication device, a wheelchair is assistive technology. We talked about transition already, and I also decided that I needed to know more about educating children with multiple disabilities, which all of our children qualify as children with multiple disabilities. So I was mistaken. All I really needed was a vocabulary lesson, because I was talking to people who were talking in acronyms and all kinds of special education language, and I didn't really feel like I was participating. So I decided I just needed a vocabulary lesson. But, you know, I had fun going to school and I did learn a lot. So our goal today is to make you guys the best advocate for your child and feel good about doing it. When I went to an IEP, I had like a standard protocol, right? I would take 2 Tylenol before I would go to the meeting. I would drink lots of coffee so I didn't have a migraine headache. And then after the IEP meeting, I'd drive like a block. I'd open my door and I'd throw up. And I'm not kidding, this happened so long because I felt so stifled in that meeting because I didn't understand what was going on. And I had so much anxiety that all I could do was vomit. You really need to trust your instincts about your children. Hopefully we can get you to a point where you can make an individual education program that leads to a unique person-centered transition. And I always want you to remember those words. A person-centered transition is based on your child's unique needs, and it's based on your family, right? It's not based on what program is available. It's not based on any of that. It's based on your child's unique needs and your goals for your children. And then I would like to help you find resources that support you. So the first step, even pre-education, you guys need to decide what are your long-term goals for your children. Because that has to be what drives your participation in the IEP, what drives your participation in what kind of related services you go to, like, you know, speech therapy, occupational therapy. Those goals of where you see your children in 25 years are what needs to drive your participation in the IEP starting at 3. Because what will happen eventually is your children, their skills are going to be so disparate from other children's skills, right? That then the school district will start dictating your children's future. Well, this is where they're functioning now. We can't make them function this way. So it has to start as soon as possible. And your goals need to include continuing education. And education doesn't necessarily mean a college degree. It could be developmental training. It could be participation in workshops. It needs to include employment. It needs to include employment. It absolutely needs to include employment. And employment does not necessarily mean you punch a time clock, right? There's all kinds of employment. You can have supported employment where a caregiver is going to a job with your child and helping them make copies. You know, going around, collecting things that need to be, what do you call that when you, shredded. Thank you. I mean, employment means that they're getting out of the house and they're doing something that contributes to society, okay? It needs to include independent living. It doesn't mean that your children are going to live independently in an apartment or a house by themselves. But at what level of independence do you want for your children, right? Are you planning for your children to live with you? Do you want your children to live in a group home? That is very, very important, because I will tell you that because of the shortage of caregivers in the United States, there are a lot of restrictions on group homes, right? And what kind of supports they will give people. So if you want your children to live in a group home, you have to have priorities starting when they're 3 about toileting, about feeding, about communicating. Like these types of independent living skills need to be a priority for you. Okay? Community participation. How is your child going to communicate in your participate in your community? What activities are they going to participate in? You know, are they going to be part of like a religious education group in your community? Are they going to volunteer somewhere? What are they going to do that is out of your home and allows them to be in the community? So I'll give you an example. Liz makes cards for Ronald McDonald House. The Ronald McDonald House by our house has 21 rooms, and every week we make 21 cards and we drop them off there, and they put them in the mailboxes for the families, and they have jokes on the back of them that are symbolized. Does everybody know what symbolization is? Okay. Symbolization is what supports communication. So when your children get OGCOM, there's different levels of OGCOM. Is it just symbols? Is it symbols and words, or is it just words? So there's programs that symbolize text. And recreation, special recreation, regular recreation. Those are all protected through the ADA, where your child can have an individual aid for them to participate in recreation programs. So I think this is a really important part of this, and it really doesn't fit here, but I think that this needs to be part of our thinking as we go on. You are not only a member of an IEP team, but you are the most important member. And the law states that you are the most important member of that IEP team. And they must address your concerns in the IEP. They must address them. If they don't, you can file a due process or a complaint with your state. Okay? So I recommend that in writing, whatever you're concerned about for your child, you put it down. Are you concerned that your child communicates? How are they going to communicate, right? Are you concerned that they develop literacy skills, math skills? Are you concerned that they eat independently? Are you concerned that they have lunch with the general ed students? Whatever your concerns are, whatever you want, you need to write them down, and you need to give them to the person that's typing in that IEP and say, here, this needs to be concluded in the parental concerns. It's usually in the first 3 boxes of an IEP, parental concerns. And it needs to be in there the way you wrote it. Because a lot of times what you'll see when you get home and you read your IEPs is, this is not what I said. I usually recommend, and this is what I did when I went to an IEP meeting, I used to have them project the IEP on the screen so I could see what they were writing in it. Outline your goals, short and long term, and you need to be talking about long-term goals with them. In an IEP meeting, they're only going to want to talk about short-term goals with you. They're only going to want to talk about what we can accomplish in a year, or what we can accomplish in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. And that is absolutely valid, because the way teachers need to write goals is they need to take your child's present level of performance in this particular area and then say, with a year of instruction, what can they accomplish? But you as parents need to take that 1-year goal and say, if we're going to do this year, then what are we going to do next year? And what are we going to do the year after that to get to that ultimate goal? They usually are probably only going to teach your children at the maximum for 3 years. For kids with multiple needs, most of the time they have kids group because we're such a low percentage of students, in 3-year bands or 2-year bands. So that teacher's only going to be with your child for a year, 2 years, or 3 years, and then your child's going to move on. And so you always have to be the one talking about, these are my long-term goals. So when they propose a goal to you, well, how does this goal fit into my long-term goals for this child, right? Services and technology that they need to accomplish these goals. I would recommend, and I know that I hope all of your children are getting related services or will be getting them. They could have speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, assistive tech therapy. And so those people need to be at the meeting. And you can request that they're there. You know, we need to be working on self-feeding for my child. They need assistive technology to do that. And that needs to be described. How is that going to work? Are they going to, you know, be in the lunchroom? Are they going to be using their assistive technology or their spoons or their forks with like maximum assistance, hand over hand, moderate assistance? And so you want all of that described in the IEP. That is the only way that that document means anything. Because I will tell you, most school districts and most teachers consider an IEP mild suggestions. It's not. It's a legal document. And so you want to have as much information written in that IEP as possible. And even written in the goal. Like you can have a goal that says my child is going to take 10 bites of their food with moderate assistance every day. You know, and so that's how specific goals need to be written. Make sure they include academic goals, literacy skills, and math skills. All children can learn how to read. There are programs for children who are nonverbal, for children who have cognitive impairments to develop literacy skills. So you have to be a leader. Everything has to be in writing. I will tell you, we have a special ed teacher shortage across the United States. And so what they're doing now is they will take a teacher, a gen ed teacher who has a couple classes in special education and then get them an emergency approval from the state to be your child's special education teacher. I went to college full-time for like 12 years and I don't feel like I know enough. So I'm pretty sure that that person with 2 classes in special education is going to take one look at your child and be like, oh my God, what do I do here? Right? At the meeting, you need to be providing them information, research, right? Because they're going to tell you, oh, well, we can't do that, or we don't know how to do that. No, no, this is how you do it. If you want to postpone the meeting and wait till another time until you've had more opportunity to educate yourself, or even better, maybe you should call in someone from your district or your co-op that has expertise in this who can help us develop appropriate goals. Believe me, the last thing that they want to do is have another IEP meeting, right? So when you say, well, we can postpone the meeting until we have someone here who has enough expertise to do this, they're going to make sure in the future that whoever they need there is going to be there, right? And when you get that invitation to the meeting, like I said, you are the most important person. If you don't see the people you want on that meeting list, then you need to write back the director of special ed and say, we're not going to be able to have the meeting unless this person's there, unless this person's there, unless this person's there. Because believe me, our children require every single specialist in your district. So make sure that they're there. You can provide them with evidence-based practices. The University of North Carolina has the best research on literacy intervention for children that are nonverbal. If the LEA is incapable of providing supports and services, ask them to bring in an outside consultant. When my daughter started kindergarten, they didn't have anyone in our district who knew anything about teaching children who were nonverbal. She already had an AuCom device. And so I found somebody and they paid them to come and talk. And I will tell you this, advocates usually don't work. I don't know, how many people have ever heard of a special ed advocate? Okay, they usually don't work. Because they can go and they can quote the law and they can give them information that may persuade them. They're very expensive. I don't know how much you guys have paid for advocates, but a lawyer is really the only person who's going to get it done. And usually you bring in a lawyer a couple times and they really don't want to argue with you anymore. How do I move this? I think like this. So now we need to get educated. Go ahead.
How would you go about finding a lawyer for like special needs?
Yeah, it's a special education attorney. You can Google in your area special education attorneys. I'm in later slides. There's a national expert on special ed law. His name is Peter Wright. He publishes a book, and you can actually go in that book. It's made for parents. It's very parent friendly. For when your school district tells you something, you can go and look it up. I will tell you that most of the things that your school district is going to tell you are not laws. What they really are policies that are not related to the law at all. Because these school districts, they develop policies to help them meet their budgets, right? Their services, what they want. So they're going to say, well, we don't do that in this district, or we don't do that, or we don't give one-on-one aids, or, you know, that's just a policy. It's nothing related to do with the law. So the purpose of special education is to prepare your children for further education, employment, and independent living. If you have a goal for your children, as long as it applies to any of these things, which I don't think there is anything that doesn't apply to these things, you're good. And you really should learn that language. In Peter Wright's book, the whole law is in there. It's broken down. He explains every section. But that really is important, you know, to understand. Well, they're going to say, well, we don't do that. We don't teach your children how to eat, or we don't teach your children how to toilet, or, you know, whatever. Well, that's part of independent living. In order for them to live independently, they have to know how to do that. They have to know how to feed themselves. And then they're going to come back to you and say they're never going to live independently. They're going to live in a group home, or they're going to live here, or they're going to live there. This independent living, and if you look in Peter Wright's book, it's independent living to the best of their ability or capability, right? Here are the people that absolutely need to be at your IEP meeting. This is not an exhaustive list, okay? But you can have your student there. I usually chose not to because I couldn't focus on Liz and trying to deal with these other 14 people. You absolutely have to have a regular education teacher there. You have to have a school person representative. And the whole purpose of this person being there, the school system representative, is to approve and guarantee services. If somebody comes to that meeting and you say, my child needs a one-on-one aide in order to participate in general education, this or that, or, you know, and they're going to say, well, we don't usually do that in our district. I'll have to check if we can do that. That's not a valid IEP meeting. You could say, somebody needs to come to this IEP meeting, the school system representative who can authorize these services. Someone tells you that they can't authorize a service, it's not a valid IEP meeting. That's the whole purpose of them being there. When your children turn 16, you're going to have a transition specialist, hopefully, and you're going to have agency representatives. A lot of times, school districts, there's only like 2,500 transition specialists in the country. And when you think of the number of school districts that there are, many of them don't have them. But you can ask your school district to reach out to their cooperative. Most school districts belong to a special education cooperative or something larger where they can purchase services. Okay, so you can say, well, I need a transition specialist. And that transition specialist is going to invite people from the Department of Human Services or what other agencies your children are going to need as they get older. Then you're invited, and any others with special knowledge or expertise about your child. This is where the OT, the PT, the AT, all of those people are going to come in, and you can request them. Okay? A person who can interpret evaluation results. That's usually the school psychologist, and it's only every 3 years that you're going to have a complete evaluation, right? The other evaluation you're going to get are the present levels of performance. So that's what your child can do based on a specific skill, and usually the person who gave that assessment is going to be able to interpret the data for you. So you don't need to have a school psychologist. And then you have to have a special education. You can ask for your a special education teacher. You can ask for your child's one-on-one aide to be there. And you can bring anyone you want to the meeting.
So I've asked for the one-to-one aide to be there because my daughter's actually in gen ed.
Okay.
With the one-to-one. They've always told us no, they're not allowed to be in there.
See, that's their policy. It has nothing, it's not related to the law at all. You can invite them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not related to the law at all. That's just one of those policies that they've made up.
Reason for a principal to hate me, but okay.
And I'm going to tell you, very few principals will ever like us.
Oh no, I'm not worried about it. I got told she won't approach me about things strictly because she's afraid of me, and I just walked away and said my job's done.
Yeah. I mean, our children require a lot of services to get a free and appropriate public education. But lucky for them, you know, there's less than 1% of us. So, you know, and the reason why I feel that we have such a problem is because we're such a small group of people that we don't have anyone else to reach out to. Like in your school district, there may be like 3 other kids like your kid. You know, Liz was like herself. There was no one else like her. And so there wasn't that group of parents that can go to board meetings or go to here or go to there. And I feel like sadly, some parents, not all parents, some parents feel that it's a burden on the district to provide those financial resources that are taken away from their children. So, you know, we don't have that community. And, you know, they can tell you something, Jody. Your first name's Jody, right?
Yes.
Okay. They can tell you something. Who else are you going to go ask? Is there another parent there in the same situation that you're going to go ask?
I was fortunate
Right.
And I'm here to make sure my child gets what they not only need, but what they deserve. Um, but I've become now like the preschool program is held at our school. We have an amazing preschool program teacher. I am now that person that she refers all of her parents to talk to, because I've advocated for other families now, to keep their kids in that school, to push them into gen ed rather than special ed with one-to-one. So another reason why my head's on the chopping block there is because I'm costing the school money.
Well,
It's
it's not, I'm going to tell you, it's not really costing the school money. Does anybody have a child in a therapeutic day school? No. So if your school district wants to send your child to a therapeutic day school, which is a school who has all children with significant needs, it's about $165,000 a year to send them there. So, you're not really costing them money. When you consider the cost of a one-on-one aide and a resource teacher who's partially devoted to your child, right? And they bill Medicaid for all related services. The cost of education, if they do it the right way, is much cheaper to do it in the school than to send them to a therapeutic day school.
Yeah, so she receives speech, OT. They won't give her PT because they say she can access the curriculum, even though it's a 2-level school and she still struggles with stairs. They still push me. And so I've also come to where I'm willing to give and take a little bit.
Right.
At what's more important. So, okay, PT we get private anyway, and the other services as well as private. But when they're in gen ed, they also get an inclusion facilitator.
Right. That's
So
the
we have
special ed
that,
teacher.
And then, like I said, she has the one-to-one. And if it wasn't honestly for our one-to-one, and again, most one-to-ones are not responsible for this, my daughter would not be potty trained. So it's my one-to-one who really reinforces our goals.
Well, and I hate to say this, but those goals that are your goals, those should be part of your child's education plan. Like, there's no reason that they're not written in your child's IEP. It shouldn't be a deal with the aide or somebody who is helping you out.
Right.
It doesn't need to be that. It should be in the IEP.
Absolutely,
Right.
it should be.
Right.
Unfortunate.
Probably, I'm going to tell you this and then we're going to move on, is the reason why they don't want your one-to-one there is because they don't want her to say anything that's going to contradict.
They already know she does.
Right, and that's why I'm saying most school districts consider an IEP just, mild suggestions. Because, unless someone's telling you that they're not doing something, how are you going to know? Which also I'd like to recommend is that you go and in person observe your children on a regular basis. You're going to know if what they're doing, they've been doing consistently with your child, or is this some show that they're putting on for you that there's something in the IEP that hasn't been done, and now they're going to do it because you're coming in to observe. If your school district has a parent visitation guide, I recommend that you get it. Most school districts don't. They just say that parents need to sign in at the office. So if they try to tell you that you need to go above and beyond that, like get okay from the principal or an okay from the special ed director or somebody else, I would do all of that in writing when you tell them that you're going to come and observe, because if they put an additional barrier on you, that's a DOJ complaint. If you have the school district policy that says parents are welcome in our school, they need to sign in at the office and get a badge. If they try to add an additional restriction on you because either you're a strong advocate for your child or they consider the IEP a mild suggestion, that is a Department of Justice. That's a civil rights complaint based on the fact that your child has a disability. And I will also tell you something that's new in IEPs. Well, it's not really new, but most people don't know, most special education teachers don't know this, is that you have to have a discussion about assistive technology at your IEP meeting. You have to. Whether your child needs assistive technology, what they need assistive technology for, that has to be a discussion in your IEP meeting. A lot of times if you go to an IEP and you didn't have that discussion, there's going to be a box checked in your IEP that they discussed assistive technology and none is needed. But you never had that discussion, right? So we talked about writing down parental concerns. There is no limit to your concerns or a topic that cannot be addressed as long as it pertains to education, employment, and independent living, okay? And I don't care if your parental concerns are a page long, typed at 11-point font, you know, like, and our children's concerns should be about that long, because we have a lot of concerns. A spoon is assistive technology, and augmentative communication is assistive technology. IDEA defines assistive technology as any item, piece of equipment, or product, whether acquired commercially or off the shelf, whether it's modified or customized, that's used to increase, maintain, or improve function. So, it doesn't have to be something that's related to a goal. If your child has learned to eat with a modified fork or spoon or plate or, you know, whatever, it's your school district's responsibility to purchase that. And not only purchase it for the school, but purchase it for the home. And yes, and I'm going to tell you, everyone is shocked here, and that is the law. They need to purchase assistive technology, and it's stated in the law that it is used not only in the school, but in the community. And they also have to provide the staff with training on how to use it, and they have to provide you with training on how to use it. So that's why assistive technology is a really big deal for our kids, and you need to know your rights regarding it. A lot of times, you know, if your child uses an adaptive spoon, they're not very expensive, maybe $20, $30 each. When you consider like how many of those you might need, like, you know, 5 of them, and plates and cups and this and that, that's a lot of money. And they're going to say, oh, well, you can buy that. No, this is assistive technology, and you need to provide it, right? If your child gets homework, right? If it's a book on screen that they need to read, right? And you don't have a touch screen for your child, or an iPad, or something that they can read that on or access that, or as part of their education program, they need to buy you a computer screen or computer for your home. You know, most of our school districts now are one-to-one computers, right? For gen ed kids. But for our kids, when you say, well, I need a touchscreen, they're gonna look at you like you have 5 heads. But, you know, right? But it's assistive technology, and that's what you need. And it needs to be for the home, and it needs to be for the school. And then sometimes they might get nasty with you, and they might say, well, we're gonna send it back and forth. And you're gonna say, okay, well then you're gonna have to send somebody to my house to hook it up to the computer every day, because I just don't wanna be responsible for that. So just get me one for my house. Chairs also, like if your child sits in a special chair at school, Liz used special chairs like her whole education. I made them buy me one and send it home, right? When she did homework at home or when she was eating at home, the way the occupational therapist was teaching her how to eat, she needed to be in a 90-90 position at a certain height with elbow supports and this and that. Okay, well, the chair costs $3,000. You better buy one and send it to my house. All right, I have question screens. We kind of have a small group. I know everybody probably has different concerns that they're dealing with in their schools.
So you said something about assistive tech therapy. So my daughter has a AAC to communicate.
Right, that would be a speech
So
therapist.
that is speech. Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify because
Right.
I know that we do that through speech, so that would not then.
Right, but assistive tech therapy would be like an AT person coming in and showing your child how to use a touchscreen computer or sticky keys, because you can modify computer keys to do different things. To use text to speech, to use a variety of other things except communication.
Okay, so then they are getting her a keyboard to use as well with like the letters to help, because we're trying to work on literacy and
Right.
recognizing all her letters. So they're getting her a keyboard with larger letters. That would that fall under the assistive
Yes.
tech therapy?
Right. Now they
Or
may,
her inclusion facilitator then, or her OT.
well, they could have whoever is most appropriate do it.
Okay.
Okay, like for something like that, it's really a fine motor thing. And I will tell you, you want to look into the University of North Carolina, Tar Heel, because recognizing letters is not a component of literacy. You don't need to know your ABCs. You don't need to be able to say them. You don't need to be able to identify them. What you need to know is the sound that they make.
Right.
Right? So a lot of times you're going to hear, well, your child can't learn how to read because they can't tell me the letters. You know, there's 20, 30 years of research that says you don't need to know your letters. What you need to know is the sounds they make. All right, any other questions?
What was that book you said that we should?
I'm going to get to it. It's Wright's Law. You can write it down. It's WRIGHT Law, 3rd edition. I think I have a picture of the 2nd edition in my PowerPoint, but they came out with the 3rd edition. Anybody else?
I just want to go back to her question about the personal assistant
Mm-hmm.
for her child that she requested and they said no. Like, I know you touched on it a little bit, but how do you respond to that technically? Like, that's not the law. Person needs to be in the.
Well, I would write a letter to your special ed director and say, I would like to invite my child's one-to-one aide to the IEP meeting. I would like to invite them. Right. To the director of special ed. Right?
So you would do that in adding into when you sign your IEP, because I get like the notice that this is the date, time, and I.
Right. If
It
there's,
says that I can invite people and put their names in there. Would you also write a letter too?
I would write a letter too.
Okay.
Because there's going to be pushback.
Oh, I
There for sure will be pushback. But, you know, you have to say, like, my child is in a gen ed class. The person who's providing her most direct instruction and support is her one-to-one aide, right? The gen ed teacher or the special ed teacher is focused on a whole classroom. I want to know how my daughter's responding to a question. I want to know how my daughter's communicating this. It's my right to invite them. And I would probably even say in there, can you tell me an idea? If they say no, can you show me an idea where it states that a child's one-to-one paraprofessional is not allowed at an IEP meeting? It's just a policy that they've made up. And so this is why I'm saying, like, this book needs to be your Bible. And if you don't know the answer to a question, Peter Wright will actually, you can email them and they will give you the answer to the question. If you're really struggling, he can recommend an attorney in your area. I'll give you an example. I was going in to observe, and the special ed director called me the day before, and she said, you know, I know you're coming tomorrow to observe, and I just wanted to let you know that the paraprofessional is wearing gloves with your child. Well, Liz drools, right? She had 2 4-day seizures. In addition to Mowat-Wilson syndrome, she also has anoxic brain injuries. She was little at the time. She had just had the seizures. She drooled. And we addressed that. She had cloths. She had wristbands to wipe her drool. Well, we got a teacher that wasn't very nice and wasn't happy that Liz was in her class. And so they decided they were going to use the bloodborne pathogen rule in the school district. Like the staff has training on bloodborne pathogens. Like, you know, you're not supposed to touch it and this and that. Well, they were saying that saliva fell under the bloodborne pathogen rule. And my head exploded. I said, are you trying to tell me that when Liz is walking down the hall with her 1-to-1 aide with all the other kids, that the staff has gloves on? I'm like, what do you think that tells the other kids? So I literally called Peter Wright on the phone, and he called me back driving through a hurricane. And he was like, this is crazy. It was in the newspaper in our district. He commented from the newspaper. So there are a lot of advocates out there. There are. You know, take advantage of them. Google them. There are also a lot of people who want to pretend they're advocates, is for lack of a better word, and they want to sort of play nice with the district. You know what I mean? They want to go in there and they want to sort of get you to acquiesce and to what the district's saying. I'm sorry. And they're going to explain to you all the reasons why you should acquiesce to what the district wants. That's not an advocate. You know, I mean, you know what your child needs. Can I take a sip of water, guys? So, you know, be careful when you're going to hire an advocate. Talk to them. Like I said, advocates usually don't work unless you have a mild problem that you want to address. If you're going to be spending $150 an hour on an advocate, I really just recommend getting an attorney. They have a lot more teeth, believe me. Okay, so this is transition. And I know some parents here have been through transition. Some people don't know what transition is, so we're going to talk about it. When your children get to be 16 years old, and in some states it's even earlier, in Illinois it's 14, a whole nother section of the IEP comes into play. And this is what really you've been preparing for, like we talked about since your kids were 3. But now it has to be part of the IEP, okay? There's 3 sections of a transition plan. There's the outcomes. It must have outcomes, and those are the things that your children are going to do when they leave school. They are going to do this. This is not a mild suggestion, right? Your children are going to attend such and such college that has a program for adults with developmental disabilities. There are many college programs now that many colleges that have programs for adults with developmental disabilities, right? Your child is going to live at home and receive community-based supports to address independent living skills. Your child is going to move into a group home in your community. I mean, these have to be specific goals. They're outcomes. And your school district is responsible 1 year later to call and check to make sure that those things have happened. And they have to report to the federal government that they have happened, right? Your child is going to attain supported employment in this field. Your child is going to be self-employed doing this. Your child is going to volunteer at such and such place. Whatever your outcomes are for your child, it has to be specific. Okay, then there is a measurable set of activities, and those activities need to demonstrate in the IEP extra things. Now this is where it gets all confusing. Extra things that the school is doing to help your child meet those goals. That means they have to have some employment training now, right? They need to be taking them out in the community, seeing what types of jobs are appropriate for them, contacting the Department of Human Resources, what kind of supports are available, what kind of education supports or funding are available for this child. There has to be a whole new set of activities that they are doing to meet those outcomes, okay? So that's 2 sections. In addition to those 2 sections, there have to be at least 3 goals. It doesn't say there can't be 10 goals, but there have to be at least 3 goals. There has to be a continuing education goal, which when I was teaching in transition, I always made a literacy goal because I was a literacy teacher. So I was always improving children's literacy skills. It has to be an employment goal, and it has to be an independent living goal. Okay? And this is where the tricky part comes in. It has to be based on your child's present level of functioning. So remember when we talked about that way back to 3 years old? You know, if you see your child dressing themselves and feeding themselves and all this kind of stuff, and you didn't work on it all those years, what they're going to say is it's not achievable now. So I know that this seems overwhelming, and it is. I just want to give you that foresight here, right? If you want your child, even if they have a developmental disability, to go to a college program for adults with developmental disabilities, they have to have some independent living skills, right? They have to be able to toilet themselves. They have to be able to feed themselves. They don't necessarily have to dress themselves. They do have to have literacy skills. They have to read at least at a 2nd grade level. So all those things for your children's future, you need to start as soon as possible. Because our kids make gains, but they make gains slowly. Right? Okay. So, do you guys have any questions about transition? You're looking at... No, I'm fired up. Okay. Any specific questions about transition? No? Okay. This is just more of what I covered. And the IEP this will all be on the website. Okay. So now I want to talk about looking at the future for our kids and what is currently happening. Okay. So in 1983, we piloted transition in our schools, okay? And in 1997, it became part of IDEA, and in 2004, it was strengthened. You know, they added more requirements to transition. They added where the state goes in and audits transition plans. There's a questionnaire that the director of special ed in your district has to fill out for every single transition plan that it meets the requirements of a transition plan. There was one more thing I wanted to tell you and then I forgot, but they've strengthened all of the rules. Oh, and a year later they have to call to see if your child attained those outcomes. And where are we 43 later? It's 43 years later. Not good. So what this tells us is that school districts are not doing a good job at educating our kids and preparing them for the future. And I don't just mean our kids, like our MWS kids. I mean all children with disabilities, okay? Because in 2023, this is the last data available, only 22% of people with disabilities were employed. Okay, this includes the gamut of people with disabilities, right? Learning disabilities, physical disabilities, speech and language impairments, and here's the sad part. It's not even documented disabilities. It's not people that qualify under the Social Security Administration. It's people who self-identify as having a disability. Okay? So when you fill out your census information, if you just check on that box that you have a problem with activities of daily living, which is eating, dressing, going to the store, taking your medicine or something like that, you're counted in this group. Now, I pretty much think I qualify for that. So if when you think about it, for our kids, this is not good. The data by the Bureau of Labor, the U.S. Department of Labor, used to be segregated by disability type. You used to talk about learning disabilities, visual impairments, hearing impairments, deaf, blind, physical impairments, and then multiple disabilities. And the multiple disability category was just like a joke, like 97% of the people were not employed. But as with all data, it's manipulated, right? Now all of the disability categories are combined together, so we think, oh my God. And when I was researching this, I was like laughing my rear end off because every government website said employment for disabilities went up 1.03%. That was it. 1.03%. And then those are just people who said they had a disability. So I'm pretty sure Liz is not telling people she has a disability. Right? They're not even included in this. This might be a problem. So here is where we are. Oh, it's 2% of the population has multiple disabilities. So this is where we are. The U.S. Department of Labor uses the CPS, which is the current population survey. That's what we fill out every so many years. And they also use this, American Community Survey. It has 6 questions, and you just have to self-identify to this. What does that mean? I got 10 minutes? Okay, thanks, honey. So this is what I was saying, like, I don't even think we're included in this. And we're sort of on policy in the government changes slowly, right? And before, when I used to be able to get labor statistics, that was probably policy developed under like Bush and Obama. And now these statistics probably came from Trump, have not changed, because the way they're reporting disability statistics to me has all changed. Moving beyond barriers. So we talked about at the beginning of this is that I really feel that the programs and the services and the funding meant to help people are really the barriers. Because they all rely on labels, their programs and services, they have a specific amount of funding, administrators make up policies, right? Then we have service providers, who all service providers are not created equal, right? They also make up their own policies and a long legacy of policies. So it's always gonna be, well, we've never done that before, or this is not what we do, or they don't, these are the kind of children we take in this program. These are the kind of children we take in this program. This is what we do. So you have to learn a way to work around these things. And you have to understand this, that this is where these people are coming from, right? It's what their boss taught them. It's what their boss's boss taught them. It's what their boss's boss before taught them. And when people try to make a change, they get pushback. I mean, I worked in schools. I have a child with significant disabilities, right? Went to school like for 12 years till Brian wanted to divorce me. And I said, you know, I went to my principal. I'm like, we got to teach these kids how to read. What the heck is going on here? I go into an 8th grade classroom. I got half the class that can't even read every sentence, you know, but there was just a policy that said, you know, well, kids can't read by this age. We give them text to speech. Well, when you go to college, if you can't read and write, you're not making it because they don't care. And you also have to understand from a literacy perspective, if you cannot read at grade level by 3rd grade, you will never catch up. Because all of the reading that is being done, you're starting here, all this work has been done, that reading, those dendrites, that knowledge, you'll never catch up. Even kids with dyslexia and kids with learning disabilities, if they're not reading at grade level by 3rd grade, they will never catch up. And just a fact is they make prisons based on 3rd grade reading levels. So we have to believe that our future is not written. This is my program. It's the Community of Exceptional Artists. I have 10 adults that participate. They all have significant disabilities. Most of them are nonverbal. They're physically disabled. And this was an art show that we had at a university. Liz has a wrapping paper business. We make wrapping paper. She does cards. So even though, because of all of those barriers that are put in place in our community, you have to find a way around it so your kids have a meaningful life, you know, because you're going to go to a day program and they're going to say, well, they go in this room. And they don't go out in the community because we work on a 1-to-5 ratio here. And we can't take care of these kids on a 1-to-5 ratio or a 1-to-4 ratio. You know, there are no predetermined educational goals or outcomes. People are going to tell you that. Well, kids at your functioning level or your IQ level, this is what they do. No, this is not what they do. This is my child. It's based on their unique circumstances and my family, right? There is no defined list of appropriate services. You know, this is where you're going to get the pushback of this is what we do. These are the services we have. You know, there are no continuing education guidelines. You know, when your kids go to school, they have to have a continuing education plan for them. They can't just tell you, well, they're not going to go to college. That's not all the continuing education there is. There are no rules for employment. Individualized supported employment has been around for at least 20 years that I know of, right? And it's based on finding a job in your community for your child that they can go to with someone to help them. So do you want your child to do that? That needs to be a goal of yours, right? Our children are probably all going to get funding for home and community-based services through either a DD waiver, a physically disabled waiver, or a medically fragile waiver. So you're all going to have supports, right? Think about what you can do to go around these barriers with those supports that you're given. You have to recognize that there are conflicts. When you go to an IEP meeting, realize these people have a job. I was a special ed teacher. I went home and I took care of my family every night, right? I wasn't planning for your children for 20 years from now. And honestly, I got out of working with people with multiple disabilities because it was just so heartbreaking to see that these families would just come in and they were not advocates for their children at all. You have a long-term plan. You care for the whole child. You see the obstacles and challenges, but you also see their strengths. You see how hard they work. Educational agencies are writing goals that students can achieve within 1 year. They only focus on a few things. They're going to say, I've been told that we never write more than 4 goals in an IEP, or we never write more than 5 goals in an IEP. There's no limit on goals. Identify their deficits. They have actually lower expectations for your children. You know, they identify them by labels, by IQ, and there's a long legacy of outcomes and data that says, well, they're only going to do this, right? They go home at the end of the day and they don't worry about your child's future. You have to recognize that those are conflicts that you face. And go to that IEP meeting recognizing those conflicts. So you have to know that you're there for your child. Realize that you have the power. Like all of us, our kids can do anything with help. If you want them to do something, put the supports in place that helps them do it. Assistive technology, one-to-one aids, whatever it is. They may need more help or different help, but that's just semantics, right? It doesn't matter. We all need help doing something. They just need different help. It's a question of finding the right help and the right environment. There are laws that protect our rights and our children's rights. This is the book that I was telling you about. These are direct links to IDEA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and NTACT is a federally funded transition resource, not only for professionals, but it is for families. Can I move on? All right. So your action plan is make a list and divide up the tasks. What can your child do? What does your child need to do? What can I do? What do I need others to do? And where can I find help? Who else can help? Building a support network. It is very important that you guys have professionals to support you. And those are where your doctors come in. Those are where your therapists come in. A lot of people feel that therapy in schools is sufficient. It's not. It's not for our kids. I used to break up things that I needed the school to do versus things that I wanted my therapist to do versus things I could do to make tasks less overwhelming. If the schools would give me pushback, then I would go to my experts and say, I need some research on this. What is best practice on this? The schools are required in special education to use research-based interventions. If you are questioning something that someone is doing with your child, please ask them for the research behind it. They are required to use research-based interventions. It's not, this is what we've always done with kids. That don't work. I've seen a lot of things done in schools that have nothing to do with research. These are medical providers that are going to provide you with best practice. Local education, the school. So you have general education, speech education. These are people in the school that are going to help you. and it is their job to help you. So if you need support with any of these things, does that mean 5 minutes? I'm going to go to questions. Okay. If you need support, like, do you want your child to participate in PE with the general education peers? Have them call in an adaptive PE teacher to modify PE. Hearing itinerant, vision itinerant. A lot of our kids have vision problems. It's very important that a vision itinerant is called in to learn where to place educational materials for them, how to teach them tracking, because nystagmus causes tracking issues, which interferes in reading. Special rec, these are some other things you can do in the communities. Special recreation providers, Special Olympics, park districts, special needs yoga. Just Google in your community. You know, talk to people. You know your children. We're not going to fit in the, this is what we do. All right, and questions?
So getting your teachers and everybody, your therapists, everyone on board. This is where my biggest struggle is. They're in my ears chirping, ask for this, ask for that, request to have this done.
Tell them to come to the IEP meeting.
Oh no, they do come to the IEP meeting, but they don't want to say anything because they're afraid that the district's going to come down on them. I'm LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified.
Wait, is that your therapist from the school or?
School therapists.
Oh.
And teachers, and I've just come through this pretty much every year. It's telling me, ask for this, she needs to do this. It was like when her preschool teacher was, you know, she really needs to go to gen ed. She should not, like, she needs to be her peers. The special ed, she just freaks out. And I was like, okay, help me. I'm not in that classroom all day. I don't know how she's engaging and how she's acting. I'm not sitting there. But it took finally, like my inclusion facilitator last year finally said she would back me when she asked me to request something because I voiced it to her that I appreciate you telling me all these things under the rug and not to like throw you under the bus, but I need you to throw yourself under the bus a little bit because I can't advocate for these things.
Well, I think you're going about this the wrong way. So what you need to do is when someone gives you recommendations, whether it's your private therapist, people at the school, people that are trying to help you out, you need to put those in your parental concerns. Okay? I want my child to, I think my child will, or I want my child to participate in the general ed classroom for these things or whatever. And then you have to, at the IEP meeting, go back to those people who gave you that recommendation and you start asking them questions. To make them answer them. Because they're not, right, they're not going to speak up. And if they give you an answer, you have to keep pressing them. The general education classroom is always the first consideration. They have to prove or say why it's not the right fit. And so you can't sit in an IEP meeting waiting for these people whose jobs rely on it to do what is in the best interest of your child if it's against the school policies. Okay?
She's like, I'm thankful, like I said, I've had an amazing team. And her school, as far as the teachers, they all know her from kinder to 5th grade. But it's just like, they're just, ask for this service, ask for this assessment, ask for this. And I'm just like, okay, but on what grounds?
Right, and you have to say, you know, my child needs an additional 30 minutes a day in occupational therapy, you know, or I would write in my general concerns like additional, I feel my child needs additional occupational therapy to improve written communication using a pencil or a keyboard or a touch screen or whatever it is. Those are the things, like I was saying, need to be in your parental concerns. Or you can simply say, I want my child to use a pencil. And then you go to your people at the meeting. How many minutes a week is it going to take you to teach my child how to use a pencil? And they're going to say like 20, 30 hours, right? Because that's not an achievable goal in a quarter, right? So you have to say what I want and then go back to them and start asking questions.
Thank you so much, Kim. We're at time, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next session starts at 3:15.
Okay, good. I got break? Okay. You're welcome. Where are you guys from? You have good education services there compared to most states. Yeah.